Allegiance at 7. All right. I don't have
Jordan's sheet, but I can just do it.
Yes.
Going down the line here. Okay, roll call. Counselor Emmerling Baker,
Here.
Counselor Compton,
Here.
Counselor Keller,
Here.
Counselor Farrell,
Here.
Counselor Miller,
Here.
Counselor Happy,
Here.
Mayor Fallon.
Here. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for everyone for coming a little bit early. It's a little bit different. We had quite a few people at the LOC, the spring conference. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to we could take this quick half hour, and then the individuals, the counselors and administrator, when you come back, it doesn't have to be a fancy report, just kind of what were your takeaways? What would you like to implement? And just kind of go from there. So it doesn't have to be formal, but I think everyone would like to hear, and that way you guys are informed, instead of saying it was just a great conference. All right.
Want me to
Counselor
start?
Happy? Sure, would you like to go?
Sure. I'd say one of the biggest takeaways I had was just recognizing just how many, I haven't been to something like this before, but just how many cities we've represented. And it seems like we've got a lot of things going on in our city, and we do, but it was kind of comforting to know that we're not alone. You start talking to people in other cities, they either are experiencing what we're dealing with or have been there and overcome it. So that I guess was one of my big takeaways, is realizing we have a lot of resources out there to lean on. Housing was almost a topic at every session. That was one of my takeaways, was just kind of realizing that that's clearly an issue. Public safety, however, was not something we talked about. It wasn't even really, maybe just tangentially, but it wasn't directly related to any of this session specifically. So I've sent over my notes. And I've got them organized by the classes I attended. The first one I was at was the fighting misinformation. And really the biggest thing that they talked about was the 3 steps to kind of combating that. One of it is, the first step is active communication, then pre-bunking and debunking. And active communication seemed like the best really method of combating misinformation, which I thought was something to take note of, since communication has been a challenge for us. And it could become problematic, especially as we're looking at implementing big initiatives and changes. I think we have to really watch how we communicate and really be conscientious about that. One of the things that they mentioned was that one of the cities does a newsletter after each city council meeting that's a little bit more digested than just the meeting minutes. And they publish that like almost immediately, just so that way people can know what we talked about before the meeting minutes get out. Because how many people really read through all the meeting minutes? And I thought that was a really great way of making our city council meetings more accessible to people that aren't here. And then they talk about the city administrator report being really more targeted, the audience being the citizens, not city council, and having it organized by department, with each department submitting information about what they've got going on in their departments. I like that idea of
It's gonna be a long report.
well, that's the thing, it doesn't need to be, it could just be bullet points. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't need to be, yes, it could just be a quick little update with what's happening in their department. And, it could be an opportunity to highlight, some recognition for some key staff that are maybe celebrating a milestone or some additional training they've been through. But just as a way to increase engagement between our city staff and their departments and in the town.
Were there any cities that had examples, like you can talk to that city who implements this?
I can't remember who it was that actually brought this up, that was talking about them doing that.
Maybe the LOC would know.
Yeah, we wouldn't know what it was about, but we just kind of see how they organize it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't want to go too much in depth about everything, but that was one of my key takeaways from that class, was just really over communicating what's going on, and some ways that we could take care of that. Affordable housing rental programs. One of the things I thought that was interesting was them talking about co-locating housing and childcare, because a lot of times, not only do we have a lot of housing that is needed, but daycare and childcare services are also a real problem, and so co-locating those together made a lot of sense to solve multiple problems. They gave an example of a project in Lincoln City, and all of the different funding examples they gave, it wasn't just one solution. There was half dozen different ways that they funded this $35 million project. And then where do we find a developer? If we wanted to partner with somebody to help bring about some of those things, there are people that really understand that the programs that are available that can help to find the funding, to specialize in that. Breakfast in the morning, I sat down and was chatting with this John Lewis, who is the Public Works Director from Oregon City. And he is also the board chair of the American Public Works Association. And I wasn't sure I think you were there for that, if that was an association that we were also a part of, because they have a lot of training opportunities for our public works staff. Behavioral health and access to housing, that was a really interesting, I was like, why is the AARP at the League of Oregon Cities conference in presenting? Like, I didn't really, but they're talking about how much longer people are living and how we really need to be thinking about making sure that our community and cities can be a place that is a place that everybody can live. And so they're talking about some of the demands that are put on the city for having a city that can help support people that are growing older. So I thought that was really, especially with us being so isolated, some of the things that popped up to me was social participation, respect and social inclusion, communication and information, because those people maybe in the aging demographic, they may not be on Facebook. So how do we reach out to them? They talked about equity and how some of the data is not really very accurate. And one of the examples they gave was undocumented migrants are just one example, how data sets can be incomplete for some communities. That was a really interesting class I was at about the employee speech, public comments, and protests, the First Amendment impact on cities. So it was really a big topic about kind of what sort of speech is protected, and policies and procedures for, I guess, avoiding a situation where someone might feel like you're discriminating and like censoring them because of what they're saying. So they gave some examples of like a city that had, where is it there? Abolish Oregon versus the city of Grants Pass, and it was a protest, and they ended up suing the city because they shut down the protest, but they ended up winning. They didn't win the lawsuit, and it was because they weren't shutting them down because of the message. They were shutting them down because they're using megaphones, and they were violating the
noise ordinance.
The noise ordinances, and so they were saying you have to be really careful about. It's not the message; it might be the way they're delivering it. And then they talked about, we talked a little bit about city council meetings and how to get things under control, without necessarily getting, again, having a decorum, but it's got to be consistently applied.
Yes.
It can't be, used as a way to, shut down people that have a dissenting opinion, for example. That's really the last thing I got. And then the other thing was just funding. It kept coming up in every class.
Everywhere.
Whatever problem you've got, reach out to the League of Oregon Cities, and there is funding for that. There's a lot of funding available from everything from energy, transportation, housing. All of it had funding opportunities.
It's mind-boggling how much, because everywhere we did go, it was like, there's a grant for that. There's a grant. I'm like, well, there's a grant for it. Where are these grants and how do we apply for them? So
it's just a matter of us nailing down which issues we want to tackle, but price should not be the thing that deters us from tackling an issue, because if that's a top issue, there's probably a way for us to fund it.
And most of those through the state or the federal grants?
Combination of,
combat.
and some of them could be loans as well. They talked about other loan programs and things they had as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we went to a couple of the same ones. Councilman Miller?
Yeah, since Pete covered all the basics.
You did. Good job, Pete. What were your takeaways or?
My takeaway, my important part was contact with, other counselors and finding out the same problems and how they solve and how they work on. I got in a discussion with, Counselor Tim McLaughlin of the City of the Dalles.
Mhm.
He is actually the person who gave the list with, Bridge of the Gods Motel to McCack. Evidently, he is the one that went and found out which hotels had kitchen facilities and stuff. So him and I had a discussion of what had happened here and our situation compared to other larger towns, you know, the no police, the no social services, transportation issues. And so he said he's gonna go back to McCack and talk to them also. He agreed that the problems we faced here are completely different. And when he found out that they did not provide any security for us like they are planning with in the Dalles, that got him upset. And I had another conversation with Mayor Mays, also of the Dalles, same thing, and so I was able to complete that with them. Also had a talk with Steve Uffelman, he's a counselor from Prineville. Talk more about their situation with their data centers and how they are securing more power and how much water usage they're using. And I asked him if they're using evaporated coolers there, and he said yes. They don't have a water problem at all during winter months because the temperatures are lower. He says when it gets up over 100, then they have the data centers use more water. But he says they also build water capture systems there and have cisterns, so they don't have to rely as much on public water because the water doesn't have to be potable. Also, he said that Facebook is installing air conditioning units now into their data centers to take away from water usage. So
That raises the electricity.
that raises the power.
Trade one problem for another.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that raises power. But if they have they've been working on adding additional power with these mini power supply things, where they scavenge up all wood products and go through a wood burner to create power. So that's where they're getting additional power. It was interesting in the workforce housing shortage portion that they described in Tillamook. Tillamook has a deputy sheriff or police officer that's living out of his car because they have no housing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so you gotta realize that on the coast, they have a lot of summer vacation homes and stuff, so they're not available to the public. We were in our the roundtable discussion, which was our last event. The roundtable I was in, we had the mayor of North Bend, Councilor from Amity, Councilor from Prineville, which was Steve Uffelman, Councilor from Lincoln City, City Manager from Talent, City Manager from Hillsborough. And the Lincoln City Councilor told me that in Lincoln City, 1/3 of their housing is SPRs, short-term rentals. 1/3 of their housing is summer vacation houses. And 1/3 of their housing is residential. So that's huge takeaway from their housing market for people that work there and live there. So, but they are a tourist town. We are also a tourist town, so we have to really be careful of how we govern on STRs and second homes and stuff like that. So we don't face a situation where police force end up having to sleep in their car because they can't find a house. I also talked to Ellen Porter, who's a counselor with Roseburg. In her day job, she's an attorney. And I asked her about OLCC and cities going through the admissions process and for permits and stuff. And she said that what happened, that OLCC quit doing the initial investigations on a lot of this. They do a paper investigation, but they rely on cities to do the public, the actual work, and then rely on what the cities tell OLCC, whatever OLCC passes to permit on. And in that, I also put a call into OLCC and I got a response. And I asked them that, and they said that's basically true. They said there is a criteria that they go on in granting OLCC permits. And if the city votes no on a OLCC permit and it comes to them, then they go out and investigate if the city's criteria is in conjunction with them. So what we do here on OLCC permit, it's not just you know, a rubber stamp. It means something to OLCC. That's about what I got.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Counselor Denise E. Baker.
Hello, thank you. Hopefully you have the paper in front of you. The 5 underlined bullets that I have are the highlights from Salem that LOC shared, and then many of our sessions were supposed to be based on these highlights. So I tried to write my keynotes based on what they shared with the 5 highlights they're working on with Salem. And we are told that LOC is doing a good job helping us. So thank you, Butch and Pete. I ditto what you're saying as well. One thing I did hear at some sessions is that many cities that spoke up, I think at one time it was in a public, they stood up and asked this question, that every council member belongs to at least one committee or commission, if not more. Seaside apparently has 17 committees. At the roundtable at the end, I sat with the mayor of Seaside. They have one downtown business association that meets weekly and one chamber that meets weekly. He meets with at least one of them each week. But and so they are saying, and we've heard this over and over again, and speaking with counselor from Toledo and Burns, they said there is money for what you want to do. You need to find it. I know you've already said that, but it is, when I asked the mayor of Seaside, how do you find this money? He said, everybody has to look for money. Everybody has to do this. And that the committees and commissions are tasked with their goal setting to help find the grants, deadlines, and begin to work on them and come to the council for review and voting on go ahead. So knowing that our tourism committee is in charge of spending tens of thousands of dollars that we look at and approve, I do believe we can empower some of our committees. I am sad for us to miss some of these grants. There are some June deadlines coming up. I know with the Main Street, there's one with tree maintenance that apparently there's a lot of federal funding, and they call it, I put it at the bottom, they call it, what was the name of the tree funding one? I just got it. It was like Renewable Cities or something. So that's coming up in June that I might look into. And the more we can get other people, I know we have people in town interested in bike paths or speed, maybe we could form a transportation committee. We do have that in our documents that the mayor can appoint, and or we can discuss this at another time. But out of the sessions, you'll see some quotes. Engaging so the second top one, as well as planning, that we need everybody. The mayor of Seaside said we would not be the city we are today without our volunteers. So he very much counted on his committees. Then the communication, which Pete brought up, and I know this puts some onus on the mayor, but some people were saying, oh, there's a mayor's Facebook page, a monthly coffee, maybe with a city councilor. Interesting. The mayor from, oh, I forgot where, he's a former Olympian. He said that they hold council meetings at the high school sometimes, get the 18-year-olds interested, move the council meeting around, and hearing from, actively reaching out to underrepresented populations, including these young people, in getting them involved in the city, including if we have any places where the senior citizens meet or other underrepresented populations, reaching out to our tribal community, reaching out to those who aren't here making the choices. Then, of course, the housing, which was there. We sat at the last round table. That was a question at the round table. I believe the mayor from, Kathy Kaiser. She's on that. She's doing everything that the state is outlining. And it comes from this acronym ROC, Residents Organizing for Change. There's the link on the document. She said, we and another city at our table were at the rock bottom because we're not doing everything. And there is funding for that. So that might be another committee that helps to look. And it's not just housing for the houseless, but it's workforce housing. And then next on the state's 5 highlights for Salem was sustaining infrastructure and services. So Pete brought up the AARP, and they've listed the 8 domains for livability, which is good for seniors and all citizens. It makes city better for all citizens. And if you Google that, other cities have incorporated that in their planning, the 8 domains, which include transportation, housing, outdoor spaces and buildings, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication, community and health services. So I know we're doing our strategic plan right now. Maybe I would be happy to be a liaison to the Planning Commission and talk more about these things as well. And then the final highlight from Salem and a seminar that some of us went to was recruitment and organizational DEI work that cities really need to have an equity statement and equity policies and procedures for hiring, for maybe in reaching out to underrepresented communities and applying an equity lens on our decision making. We know we've had some people actually comment on that with our steering committee about what was our equity lens. So that might be something we need to really think about, because a quote during that seminar was, "A city is more than infrastructure, it's a feeling. Everybody needs to feel welcome here. Equity is the just and fair inclusion in a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential." That means all ages. That means all cultural diversity. That means languages even. Are we welcoming to that? So, and I just put some of every table you went to, everybody you talked to mentioned, there's money, there's money, there's money. So I'm going to look at my notes and share that otherwise. And then again, just asking folks what they spend their TLT funding on. Seaside Convention Center was paid for out of TLT funding, wayfinding signs, benches, digital event sign. And I forgot to write, but almost every person I talked to that's part of a city council said they also have work sessions at least once, if not twice a month, because there's too much to talk about. And that's it.
And that's it. All right, thank you. Well, I think everyone has touched on a lot of my notes and the same thing. It was an amazing conference. I highly recommend it if you can go. Tammy, I know you and I talked about it, that, you know, there's individuals who have they can bring their kids if they're special needs. And so I think that's something that we could work out. The mayor's workshop, it was amazing. Ron Mock, he's a professor of politics and peace studies. You can go on the LOC and you can download all of the slides and everything. Highly recommend that. I'm gonna condense everything here. The keynote speaker, Andrea Bell, she's the executive director of Oregon Housing and Community Services. Her and I sat down, had a personal connection, and so I'm committed to following up with her. Talked a lot about affordable housing. How do cities do it? Where are the funds? And she's very much of, Oregon hasn't shown up for this, but we're gonna show up now. I'm like, well, I'll be darned, this is good. I'm glad you're showing up. So her and I had lots of good conversations, and I'm gonna circle back around to that. The roundtable talks, I know Jordan and I, all of us, they were really, it was at the very end of the conference, and you got to sit down and have private, like personal, not private, but personal conversations. And so it was really, our table was amazing, learned a lot. Mayor Kathy from Kaiser, she's amazing. Her background is in planning. So we were like, oh, planner. So we had tons of questions for her. Lots of good ideas on housing as well. Let's see. I know we're biggest thing is connecting with other people. You learn a lot of really good information, but it's all of the relationships that you create and make, it helps you in your position. It does make you feel like you're not alone, because everyone that is having the same or similar challenges. Let me see, I just even to kind of close the loop, just for my job, what I do, I have this week there's a big conference up at MCMC in the Dalles, and there's people there that I've met at the conference, so it's all connecting. So my part is the healthcare part of it, trying to bring more resources to the gorge, the whole gorge as an area. Also, we can go into detail later, but Oregon State has a program called RARE. Don't ask me what that acronym is right now, because my computer would not print out anything. So, but it's a program where it costs a little bit, but you get interns and they can do all sorts of different projects for you. But I'm looking into that more. And then also I'm gonna start doing coffee with the mayor, pick a day of the month. And so we'll have it at other different places. The mayor, Manzanita, she does Mayor Monday at the library. So I thought that was a good idea. And so I'm starting to look at those and implement those as well. And that's it, I condensed it. 2 minutes to spare. So, and then I wanna know how you guys feel about meeting, if we could just do at least once a month, a half hour before. And then, because all of these ideas are great and they're fun, but they don't mean anything if we don't take the knowledge and implement it. And so maybe they could be just simply work session meetings. So maybe like the first meeting of every month, meet at 6:30 and have a work session. I know it's tough for you to get here by 6, but I think
6:30 is much easier.
yeah, that's what I thought. So maybe we have a lot more, maybe adjusted to like 6:15 or something, but, and then that way, because of all these great ideas, it's like, okay, yes, there's money everywhere, but who's doing it? How are we doing it? How we're going to implement it? So I think that's about it.
It was pretty eye-opening at one point. I don't remember the numbers that they talked about over the last 40 years, how many people have moved to the state of Oregon versus how many homes have been built. And I was like, well, that explains, I don't know the numbers, but they're pretty staggering, why we're in this housing crisis. that we're in.
Right.
It was
It
eye-opening.
was a lot, yeah. And I learned more about land trust too. That was really interesting. So that's a whole nother subject. All right, looks like it's 7. Should we start the meeting?
We need to end this one and
Wait, let's,
start the new one.
all right. We're ending the work session. Do we need a vote?
Yes.
Is there a motion to end the work session?
Motion to move that we end our work session.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Compton,
Aye.
Emmeline Baker,
Aye.
Farrell,
I,
Happy,
Aye.
Keller,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye. All right, that concludes the work session.
For all of those online, I'm going to end this meeting and open up a new one for the council meeting. Thank you.
Okay.